No, the world is not actually at any point going to reach a population of 10 billion. Hey, it's me, Max here again. PayPal, Patreon, YouTube, membership, things, all that's down below if you want to support me. Only do so if you actually can. So, was about time I got around to this. If you're as old as I am or older, you may have a lingering memory of seeing the change over time in population projections of the future. It was projected by the UN that the world would reach close to 12 billion people by around 2100 and keep going on from there. And then during the 2000s, the general outlook presented was that the world would probably peak around or above 11 billion. And then in the 2010s, it started getting lowered down under a peak of 11 billion, down to around in 2020 or 2022, I think it was 10.5. And even most recently, their latest reassessment is that it will peak around 10.2 or 10.3, I believe, with some other independent study groups who actually factor in for continued changes that are likely to be seen, predicting a sooner peak around 9.7, which would be more likely, as you can probably tell by just the latest reassessment they made within a period of only 2 years. The models that they're running off of are constantly turning out to not be correct, which is to be expected when you look at some of the projection methods they use, which show countries with declining birth rates just abruptly stopping and then staying at the same level they're currently at forever, as opposed to going further down and or back up and then back down again, which is what's, actually going to happen because that's how reality works. And it was assumed for decades that as the demographic transition continued, the whole world eventually would shift away from the pre-industrial massive families of 6 to 8 children, but would settle out somewhere around, some kind of stable replacement, like between 2 and 3. But that has proven to absolutely be untrue. And we now see in 2025 utterly collapsed birth rates, or fertility rates rather, of, in the lowest case, South Korea, seeing only 0.7 children per woman. China is down to 1. Thailand by the end of this year is going to be under zero point 0.9. Chile over in South America became the first non-Asian country to fall all the way below 1 and is down at around zero point 0.9. And so many others have fallen below 2, even well below 2. And a lot of those are countries with large populations who were previously, for a variety of factors or reasons, believed to not be ones that would really go down that far, but have proven quite the contrary, like Argentina dropping all the way down to 1.2, chasing Chile as fast as they can, Mexico likely falling below 1.5 this year, whereas it was once believed they might never go below 2. Brazil racing downwards as well towards 1.4. Turkey, after previously looking like it might hold steady for an indefinite period, has actually started to dive down fast and is down towards 1.4. Indonesia didn't look like it was really going to go below 2, but now it's heading down pretty fast. Vietnam even held around 2 for a long time pretty steadily, but now they've started creeping down as well, going down towards 1.9 or 1.8. India, the big decider, has been declining at a rather constant rate over the decades, and one of the big indicators was whether it was going to stop around 2 or not, and it has not. It has kept going, and looks like they're going to be down closer to 1.8 by the end of this year. And even for the countries that are above replacement rate, that are still above 2 to some degree, they are A, not staying as high as was constantly forecast, and B, some of them are quickly diving towards 2 and may even be going below. Like, for example, in the Middle East, Iran actually already is down under 1.5 children per woman. Egypt was pretty high for a while, but are now descending really quickly and are at around 2.5, and within a few years will likely hit 2. And given the fact that Tunisia and Morocco have both fallen below 2, it seems Egypt will likely do the same. Sub-Saharan Africa, where just assumed that birth rates were going to stay absurdly high forever, that is also, like everything else, turning out to be completely false. And when Africa started entering into a demographic transition, it was constantly assumed and is still being forecast by some that it would take several decades. However, going by the trends thus far, it looks like it's really only going to take about 2 for each country, based on when each country really starts. Nigeria, for example, with the most massive population in Africa, was was pretty high up there, close to 6, like many others, but over just a very recent time, they have dove down pretty fast and are going to hit and pass below 4 pretty soon. Their birth rate thus falling by about a third in just a single decade. Ethiopia, another one with a large population, is heading down towards 3 really fast. Some African countries well ahead of forecasts have actually already even dropped below 3, such as Kenya, who is down around 2.7 or 2.8. So you get the mental picture from that, hopefully, and the number of additional people the population increases by each year is already feeling negative weight on it and is being pulled back again faster than expected. And that rate will only broaden, especially over the next 10 years or so. But at the moment already, you have Japan shedding 1 million people per year, and they're going to stay rather constant at that rate. South Korea really soon, once we hit the 2030s, despite having a smaller population, because of how much of a sheer collapse their fertility rate saw, is also going to, for a time, shed 1 million people per year. China is currently losing 2 million per year, and when we hit the 2030s, they're going to be in the double digits, losing between 10 and 15 million per year. Russia is currently losing 500,000 per year, and over the course of the next 10 years, that's going to get to the point of losing between 1 and 2 million per year. Thailand is right at the cusp of where their curve's about to fall down. Once we get into the 2030s, they're going to be losing 500,000 to as many as 1 million people per year. And then apart from just the negative weight, we also have the fact that within that same very near time frame of especially the next 10, in some cases 15 years, the natural increase of many other countries is going to go null. Countries like the US, for example, and France and the UK, where the population is not going to decrease because people still immigrate to them, but their natural increase, the amount of people being added to the planet overall in them, is going to effectively go flat. As even in countries like the US and France, where their population pyramids are pretty vertical, they are still slightly narrower at the bottom. The age brackets at the top that are passing the line of life expectancy have still have still been smaller. You can see, as in the case of many of these countries, the post-World War II population boom, that those older age brackets, the boomers, are much wider. And in the case for many of these countries, the US, France, the UK, that abrupt widening age bracket up there is just a few years out from crossing over the line of life expectancy. No, obviously, everybody in that bracket doesn't just abruptly drop dead when they hit that age, but each individual bracket, once they get close to that age, and then especially once they pass above that line, begins contracting decently. And then using a similar line overlay display, you can see that if the decline in the generation brackets being born in India continues, then draw that out about 20 years or so, and their size lines will meet with those of the generation brackets that will at that time be reaching the line of life expectancy. So around then, India will peak and their net additions will go null as well, and also wars, because those are a thing. And we're entering into another period where there's going to be a lot more of them. We've already had the Russia-Ukraine war. We've already had the Tigray genocide, civil war in Ethiopia. We've had the Sudan civil war going on for a while now. We've got the upcoming Chinese invasion attempt on Taiwan. We've got the now ongoing attempt by Ethiopia to do the same thing to Amara that it did to Tigray, and the potential wars that might be about to come between Ethiopia and Eritrea, or even Ethiopia and Somalia. We've got another round of mess developing in the eastern portions of the Congo after already seeing several multi-decade long things happen there during the later 20th century that resulted in the deaths of millions. So those are also a factor you do have to add in. They're just not the primary ones. But anyways, there's everything laid out for you as best as I can. We are not reaching 10 billion people at any point. Most likely you're going to see the peak around 9.5. And regarding the active current global population number, don't mind the mainstream media, what they're constantly telling you, and the reason why you'll see constant contradictions in those numbers is that usually articles will just pull the quote number of the day from population clock websites, which are not basing those numbers that you see there on any kind of data. They are just running on algorithms that were plugged into them, typically based on data from the early or mid 2010s. Some of them are even still running on data from the 2000s when the sites were first created, and they don't exactly go around correcting or updating those. So many of those clocks are still just running upwards on X number of people per year with zero change being implemented to them. The one that's the likely most accurate is actually the one on the US Census Bureau website regarding the global population. It's still probably, I would estimate, overcounting by a few million. Remember, use data, not algorithms. Anyways, that's it for this one. So thank you everybody for sticking around and listening. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't already. PayPal and Patreon are down there if you want to support me. Only do so if you actually can. There's a link to a Google Drive folder in the description with the graphs I showed and all kinds of other graphs. There's a link under that to my photography Instagram. There's a link in the top pinned comment to my cat's YouTube channel. May God bless and protect all of you, and I will see you all around next time.